This is Reuters.
Jailed crypto boss Sam Bankman-Fried considered paying Donald Trump not to run for re-election. That's according to excerpts from a forthcoming book revealed over the weekend. The Washington Post published a passage from Going Infinite, The Rise and Fall of a New Tycoon by Michael Lewis. In it, the writer says Bankman-Fried told him that he explored paying Trump not to stand again in 2020. Lewis says the then boss of crypto firm FTX had a back channel to the re-election campaign team.
Make America great again.
Through this came word, Lewis says, that Trump would consider stepping aside for $5 billion. The excerpt did not say why the deal never went ahead. Lewis also claims that Bankman-Fried was planning to give up to $30 million to Republican Senator Mitch McConnell to help defeat ardently pro-Trump candidates. There was no comment on the excerpt from spokespersons for Trump or Bankman-Fried.
Out of the way!
The former FTX chief is now in jail awaiting trial. He's pleaded not guilty to 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy stemming from the collapse of his company. Lewis's book release is set to coincide with the start of the trial this week.
Sam Bankman-Fried is going on trial on fraud charges in New York starting on October 3rd. This comes nearly a year after FTX, the cryptocurrency exchange he founded, collapsed and declared bankruptcy. The 31-year-old is accused of stealing billions of dollars in FTX customer funds. Federal prosecutors say he used the money to plug losses at Alameda Research, which was a crypto-focused hedge fund that he also owned, and to buy luxury real estate and donate tens of millions of dollars to U.S. political campaigns. Now, the former billionaire has pleaded not guilty. He has acknowledged risk management failures at his companies, but says he never intended to steal any funds. Now, his lawyers are expected to argue at trial that Bankman-Fried thought FTX was allowed to make investments with customer funds, just like banks use deposits to make loans. His lawyers are also expected to try to pin most of the blame for the failures of his businesses on others. Now, 3 former members of Sam Bankman-Fried's inner circle have pleaded guilty and are set to testify against him at trial. That includes Caroline Ellison, Alameda's former chief executive officer, and also Bankman-Fried's on and off romantic partner. Now, the trial is expected to last about 6 weeks. In order to get a conviction, prosecutors must convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt, both that Bankman-Fried defrauded FTX customers and also that he knew at the time that what he was doing was wrong. Bankman-Fried is going to be traveling to and from court each day from the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, which of course is a far cry from the $30 million penthouse in the Bahamas where he was living up until his December 2022 arrest. A judge jailed him in August after finding that he likely tampered with witnesses at least twice, including by sharing Ellison's private writings with a reporter.
Stop playing games. Get this done.
U.S. President Joe Biden is pressing congressional Republicans to back a bill to provide more aid to Ukraine after a stopgap funding bill that avoided a government shutdown left aid for the country out. Ukraine funding was dropped at the insistence of some hardline Republicans. Without the bill, millions of federal employees would have been without a paycheck and a wide range of services would have been cut. On Sunday, Biden said he expected Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to keep his commitment to secure funding, but asked whether he could trust McCarthy on another deal. Biden replied,
"We just made one about Ukraine, so we'll find out."
A White House official said the president was referring to Republican promises of passing a separate bill on the issue.
Look at me. We're going to get it done. I can't believe those who voted for supporting Ukraine, overwhelming majority in the House and Senate, Democrat and Republican, will for pure political reasons let more people die needlessly in Ukraine.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in a speech released on Sunday, said nothing could shut down Ukraine's resolve to fight against Russia, although he didn't mention Washington's turmoil directly. Ukraine's defense minister said separately that he had received reassurances of further military assistance in a call with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Meanwhile, in Kyiv, the European Union's foreign policy chief on Sunday said the bloc would increase military support for the country, and in a social media post said it was preparing long-term security commitments.
On this vote, the yeas are 88.
The United States Congress has managed to avert another federal government shutdown for now.
The bill is passed.
As the clock ticked toward the midnight deadline on Saturday, the House and Senate passed a so-called stopgap measure, which will keep the government funded for the next 45 days. The critical moment came when House Speaker Kevin McCarthy denied the demands of his party's hardliners, who wanted to pass a bill in the chamber with only Republican votes. Instead, a bipartisan bill passed with 209 Democrats and 126 Republicans in support. At least one GOP hardliner had said his group could consider removing McCarthy from his role as the House Republican leader over his actions.
You know what? If somebody wants to remove because I want to be the adult in the room, go ahead and try. But I think this country is too important.
However, McCarthy did cave to pressure from House conservatives to drop funding for Ukraine. Democrats agreed to avoid a shutdown first. The top House Democrat, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, called the bill's passage a win.
The American people have won. The extreme MAGA Republicans have lost.
He urged Congress to bring back discussions on aid for Ukraine soon. Members of the Senate echoed the sentiment, including top Republican Senator Mitch McConnell.
I'm confident the Senate will pass further urgent assistance to Ukraine. An entirely avoidable government shutdown would not just pause our progress on these important priorities, it would actually set them back.
As the bill was sent to the U.S. president to sign into law, Joe Biden also stressed the need to continue supporting Ukraine. But in a statement, he also called its passage good news, saying it was, quote, preventing an unnecessary crisis that would have inflicted needless pain on millions of hardworking Americans. Lawmakers now have the next 45 days to come up with a long-term solution or risk a shutdown again.
You know, where I come from, when you make a deal, you give your word, you keep it. You give your word, you say, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, and you do it. You keep it. You keep your word. And I expect the Republican Speaker and Republicans in Congress to honor their word and keep the deal they made months ago when they tried to threaten us with almost international bankruptcy by not paying our debts. The brinkmanship has to end, and there shouldn't be another crisis. There's no excuse for another crisis. Consequently, I strongly urge my Republican friends in Congress not to wait. Don't waste time as you did all summer. Pass a year-long budget agreement. Honor the deal we made a few months ago. And I want to assure our American allies and the American people and the people of Ukraine that you can count on our support. We will not walk away. The vast majority of both parties, I'll say it again, Democrats and Republicans, Senate and House, support helping Ukraine and the brutal aggression that's being thrust upon them by Russia. Stop playing games.
The Nobel Assembly at Karolinska Institutet has today decided to award the 2023 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine jointly to Katalin Karikó and Drew Weissman for their discoveries concerning nucleoside base modifications that enabled the development of effective mRNA vaccines against COVID-19. Here are the two laureates. Katalin Karikó was born in 1955 in Szolnok in Hungary. She performed her prize-winning studies at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia in the United States. She is currently a professor at Szeged's University in Hungary and is also an adjunct professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Drew Weissman was born in 1959 in Lexington, Massachusetts in the United States. He performed his prize-winning research together with Katalin Karikó at the University of Pennsylvania, where he is still active as a professor.
The chairman of troubled property giant China Evergrande, Hui Ka-yan, is being investigated on suspicion of transferring assets offshore. That's according to a Wall Street Journal report on Monday, coming as the company struggles to complete unfinished projects. It follows news from Evergrande on Thursday that Chinese authorities were probing Hui for unspecified illegal crimes. Evergrande is the world's most indebted developer, with more than $300 billion in total liabilities. Since 2021, its financial woes have weighed on the Chinese economy as well as global markets. The embattled developer has been working to get creditors' approval to restructure its offshore debt. But the process grew more complicated last week when Evergrande said it could not issue new debt because of police investigations. On Friday, Reuters reported sources as saying Evergrande had sold its luxury superyacht for about $32 million earlier this year. That further shrinks the developer's offshore assets, coming at a time when Evergrande's bondholders are set to sharpen their focus on what the company owns overseas. Reuters also reported last week that a group of offshore creditors was planning to join a court petition. Evergrande did not immediately respond to Reuters' request for comment during the week-long National Day holiday. Trading in the shares of Evergrande and
Atop a halted freight train in Mexico, a group of migrants heading for the US border sat waiting on Friday. The train stopped abruptly miles from the crossing amid the ongoing suspension of dozens of northbound trains over migrant safety fears. A Reuters witness said hundreds were aboard the stationary train in a desert-like area near Villa Ahumada, some 76 miles from the border town of Ciudad Juarez in the Mexican state of Chihuahua. Sasha Pacheco is one of them.
We asked the train driver, and he said that he would depart in 10 hours. They're treating us like animals. Why would they take us if they're going to do this to us? We're hungry, hot, thirsty. We're in the middle of the desert. There's not one tree. We want to get to the US. We're just an hour from our destination, but it would take a day walking with a baby.
She added that there were no alternative transport options from their current spot. Also on Friday, further east in the border city of Piedras Negras that sits opposite Eagle Pass in Texas, Venezuelan migrant Jose Julian said he too had been stranded while travelling aboard the cargo trains. He said that it took 3 days on foot to make it to the border. 60 northbound cargo trains run by Mexico's Ferromex were stopped last week after about half a dozen migrants suffered death or injury. The company later said it restarted some routes where there was no known heightened risk. Banners on the side of the train stopped in Villa Ahumada read, "Thank you, Ferromex," put up by migrants who had been initially grateful that the trains had begun the journey. Grupo Mexico, which owns Ferromex, could not immediately be reached about the sudden train stoppage. Earlier in the day, a spokesperson said they had no additional updates to share about the exact number of trains still stopped. The stoppage of trains in the past week has caused around $1 billion worth of goods to be stuck at the border. For years, migrants trying to reach the United States have crisscrossed Mexico on cargo trains. Collectively, such trains have become known as La Bestia, or the Beast, because of the risks of travelling by rail.
Slovakia's pro-Russia Robert Fico was in pole position to start talks on forming a government on Sunday after winning the country's parliamentary election. Three-time former Prime Minister Fico's Smer SSD party won almost 23% of the vote, more than any other party, after campaigning on a mandate to end military aid to Ukraine. A government led by Fico would see NATO member Slovakia joining Hungary in challenging the European Union's consensus on support for Ukraine. It would also signal a further shift in the region against political liberalism, which will once again be tested when Poland goes to the polls later this month. Though touted to win by the exit polls, Liberal Party Progressive Slovakia, or PS, took second place. Its leader, Michaela Szymacka, vowed to seek partners to prevent the former leftist Prime Minister's return to power.
Realistically, there are two options at the table. One is a government led by Mr. Fico, and the other one is a coalition made up of Progressive Slovakia and other partners, which would in fact have over 80 MPs. But we fully respect the fact that the president, as she has said before, is likely to nominate Mr. Fico to give it a try first.
Fico's party is more nationalist and socially conservative, criticising social liberalism, which it says is imported from Brussels. The PS is liberal on green policies, LGBT rights, deeper European integration and human rights. 5 other parties won seats. Third-placed leftist party Hlas is an offshoot of Fico's Smer party and may be poised to become the kingmaker of a coalition. Hlas leader Peter Pellegrini is a former colleague of Fico's and kept his options open on future coalitions.
The question is whether what happened in the US Congress last weekend is an incident or a system. I think it was an incident. We have a very in-depth discussion with both parts of the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, and against the background of a potential shutdown in the United States, the decision was taken as it was. But we are now working with both sides of the Congress to make sure that it does not repeat again under any circumstances. So we don't feel that the US support has been shattered, and therefore I believe that we will be able to find the necessary solutions.
عارف المكعب بتاع المديريه كتله من جهنم. انا قدامها انا استرها بس يا رب اللي فوق دول يعرفوا ينزلوا ويعرفوا يتنفسوا بس من الدخان ده والقرف ده.
Eurozone manufacturing activity showed little sign of recovery last month. That's according to a key survey released Monday. It showed there was a deep and broad-based downturn in September, and demand kept shrinking at a pace rarely surpassed since the data was first collected 26 years ago. The HCOB final Eurozone Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, dipped to 43.4 in September. That was down from August's 43.5. Any reading below 50 marks a contraction in activity. European powerhouse Germany was hit by weak demand and a rapidly falling output. The German manufacturing PMI rose to 39.6 in September from 39.1 in August, far below the 50 level. The survey showed output fell at the fastest rate since May 2020, amid a further sharp drop in new orders. French manufacturing was also down as the sector contracted for the 8th month in a row in September. The French PMI came in at 44.2, down from 46.0. Production and new orders fell at their sharpest rates there in more than 3 years. Policymakers at the European Central Bank may welcome news of falling prices, having so far failed to get inflation back to target next year. Indonesia launched its long-delayed $7.3 billion high-speed railway on Monday. President Joko Widodo inaugurated the line connecting the capital Jakarta with the city of Bandung. He said it was the first such line anywhere in Southeast Asia. The railway runs just over 88 miles and is one of Widodo's flagship infrastructure projects. It's also a sign of China's growing influence in the region. Beijing has supported the project as part of its controversial Belt and Road Initiative, and a consortium of Indonesian and Chinese companies built the railway. Indonesian Minister Luhut Binsar Panjaitan.
However, on this historical day, we prove that this project can be completed and operated. This wouldn't happen without good teamwork from all parties, including the central government, local government, state-owned enterprises, private sector and public, as well as the Chinese government and its related companies, all working together to finish this project.